Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. It is promptly 1 p.m. Eastern Time here. We're going to go ahead and get started. As we do at the beginning of every one of our webinars here, for folks who've never joined us here before, a few technical things. Click the little red arrow on the sidebar of your webinar control panel there to get that out of the way. If you've got a single monitor set up, if you've got a dual monitor, just drag that control bar off to your second desktop. Get that out of the way. Allows you to get the full visual effect of our presentation today. We are recording today's webinar event. The video for today's event will be out on our Support Center page here within the next 24 to 48 hours or so you can certainly revisit this. We certainly encourage you to check out the Support Center page. It is chock full of so much free training documents and videos out there. It'll make your head spin. If you've not visited that, please do. We're going to work together for about the next 20 minutes or so about 1:20, 1:22 Eastern Time here. We've got a lot of material to go through. If you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the control panel. I'll try my best to keep an eye on those. If they're topical for what I'm discussing, I'll discuss it at that moment, but if not, I may have to hold off and answer those questions when we get to the end of our time allotted here. If you've seen what you came to see at any point, by all means, please choose File, Exit, Leave Webinar. Thank you so much in advance for attending. Today's event is using Accounting Workbook A201, pages 13 through 23 as its foundation, printed foundation for today. If you're interested in purchasing the workbooks, you may certainly check out the workbooks page on our website where you can purchase those workbooks either individually or in bundles. We certainly try to follow along with the workbooks whenever possible just to help folks get a clear understanding of how Church Windows works in line with on how it works and functions as well as with the workbooks as well. Please keep your questions on topic, meaning about our reports, report formatting, what have you. Another webinar event may be suited to better answer your questions, or of course our support staff are always available and happy to help answer questions that you have. So again, with a lot of material to cover here, about 10 pages worth of material, let's go ahead and get started. So this is pursuant to our topic yesterday when we were kind of talking about some accounting reporting basics. We talked about where to find the reports, so right here under reports in the middle. We talked about the multiple report groupings up here under reports and export. When we click on that in the top left, we can get the menus for our different reports. Okay, so when we click on reports and export, we got financial and transactions and worksheets, etc. So we know where now to find those reports. Now today we're going to be talking about trying to kind of manipulate and format those reports to get what we want, okay, to get what we're wanting. So the very first thing it talks about on page 13 is the report format tabs. And what that's talking about is, I don't care what report it is, whether it's under, balance sheet, treasurer's report, funding, general ledger, transaction. Virtually every report in Church Windows Accounting has a series of tabs here to our general ledger, because this is one of the ones that it kind of talks about a lot on the subsequent pages. But we notice here across the top of our general ledger options, we see an options tab and custom account groups and columns and fonts. And folks, there's no way we can cover all these reports and what's on every single one of the reports in our allotted 20 minutes, probably now down to closer to 15 at this point. But what we can tell you is basically you've got to get accustomed to looking at the various tabs and what's on those tabs on your accounting reports. Okay, that's kind of the simplest way I can put it, is virtually every report in accounting is going to have a tab called options. Okay, that's a certainty. Okay, but what's on that options tab is what may be different, and that's what you've got to pay attention to. Not all reports report on the same thing. So these options tabs are going to show different information depending on the report that you have. So if we notice here, like under our general ledger, we've got our accounting year we can choose. We've got our transaction types. We've got balances or single account. But if I go to a different report, like if I go up here to my treasurer's report, say, for example, and I click on my options tab, we notice we have different selections on there. So what that's basically alluding to is that sentence that's right there on the options tab on page 13 that says different reports offer different options. Okay? I encourage each and every one of you to dive in and play with these reports. Okay? Just explore them. Learn to understand what they're telling you. Okay? Like this one right here under our treasurer's report. Right here, this one tab called, this checkbox right here called Truncate Cents. This report is, I think, the only report in accounting that has that option for Truncate Cents. Maybe Fund Activity Report. I don't recall. But there are not many reports that have the Truncate Cents, I don't think. I could be wrong. But we'll check when we go back and look at some of those other ones, okay? But pay attention to what's on each one of the tabs. Each one of those options tabs, because they're going to be different. Yes, virtually all of our tabs on our accounting are going to have an option to choose an accounting year. I like to spend a few minutes or a minute talking about this because, you know, the accounting year here, right up here in the upper left, and again, it doesn't matter which report we do, and if I close out of my treasurer's report and I go back to, say, my general ledger options, notice here we've got a menu in the upper left called accounting year. So what that means is I don't have to change my accounting year physically back to a different year to run that report or any report for a prior year period. All I have to do is choose the accounting year I'm wanting from the menu, make my other selections for the report, and boom, I've run that report for that year while still remaining in 2021, okay? So look for that, accounting year. It's on every single report in accounting, okay? It's there. You do not have to change the year to run reports for a prior year, okay? Like in this case, under our general ledger options, it talks about on page 14 here in the middle, we've got our include, running balances, accounts with no activity, reverse transactions, and I'm talking about these boxes right here in the middle. These are just simply options that we can change the format for how our general ledger is run, and some of our other reports will probably allow reverse transactions, but it may not have something like running balances, okay, because this general ledger report allows us to see transactions and show a running balance of the effect of each transaction on it. Other reports that don't show transactions won't have this, okay? General ledger and transaction journal are going to have the options to show your reverse transactions. Church Windows has a record of every transaction that's either been reversed or corrected, and there's a listing of reverse transactions in the software. Let me see if I've got some in here. So we're going to choose year to date on here because they do appear a little differently on our general ledger than they do in other places. Sure. So let me zoom in right here real quick. So right here when we go into our general ledger options, we see here in the upper left-hand corner next to my transaction numbers 66, 673, 74, 75. See that little caret icon on there? That denotes reverse status. So right there. So you see those right there? So yes, if I uncheck to include reverse transactions on my general ledger report and I click print, those reverse transactions are going to be omitted, okay? But I can only include reverse transactions on reports that show the most detail or the transaction detail, okay? And that's kind of just shown on page 15 there about those reverse transactions there. Again, when we go to something like our treasurer's report where we were before, let me erase some of my drawing here. We go up to our treasurer's report, no option for reverse transactions. Why? Because this doesn't detail all the transactions. This is just a summary, okay? Many of the reports, including something like our treasurer's report right here, is going to have an option to be able to choose a fund. So let's say I want to just see the transactions or the accounts that are on my treasurer's report as they relate to my general fund. So I choose general fund. I click print. I can include accounts with zero balances or not. When I click print, I'm only seeing, folks, income and expenses that are linked and related to my general operating fund. No other income and expenses linked to other funds. But I have a similar option again when I go back to, say, something like my general ledger. So if I go back to my general ledger, notice here I have an option called fund at the very top of the menu. If I choose my general operating fund and I now click print, what this does, again, is it brings in all of my accounts that are linked to my general operating fund with activity or not, if I choose to include accounts with no activity. Okay? So one shows transactions, one does not. Okay? So, just again, you've got to learn to pay attention to what each one of these, what's on the options tab for each one of these reports. Okay? Truncating cents, again, that's an option that's what is available only on, see, we don't have it here on the general ledger. It is on our, do we not want to see the cents on our treasurer's report? Uncheck truncate cents. So again, we can choose fund in a couple different places on our reports, but because they're different reports reporting on different things, it reveals different information, okay? But the same accounts in this case. Shows me all the income and expenses. It just shows transactions on one. It just shows summary or year-to-date or period activity totals on the other. Okay, many reports, like here under our general ledger, I can choose a single account. So if I go, okay, I want to choose my telephone bill, okay, my telephone expense. I can choose my telephone expense, click, I'm going to uncheck, well, I can leave accounts with no activity, doesn't matter, I'm pretty sure I've got activity in this. Sure enough, it'll bring in all of my bills that I posted to my telephone expense throughout the year. Balances in this case is exclusively on the general ledger. I can choose either a month or I can choose year to date. Okay, so if I choose a month, it's going to show me just the activity for that particular month. So if I backdate that to say February and click year to date, it's going to include more transactions the broader the date range or the longer the period. Okay. Again, I'm encouraging you to feel confident to come in and kind of explore what each one of these reports will reveal for you, okay? There's lots and lots of options for how we can do it. And we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left, and I've got about another 6 or 7 pages to get through, okay? Comments. We can add comments to reports and transactions too, but we're going to kind of shift our focus over to that. So notice that right here, it says line item comments must be visible column, see columns tab. Well, we're going to get to that in a minute, okay? Certain reports, like our general ledger and transaction journal, will allow us to choose particular transaction types. So right over here, we notice transaction type. Right there, I can say, okay, I only want to see, donation transactions. I can uncheck all of my other transaction types and check just the donation transactions, and it'll only show me on the general ledger my donation entries for the year. Okay? Transaction journal, the other detailed report right here, also has a similar option, but it's over here on the right side of the screen, where I can again say I want to see only specific transaction types in combination with maybe some other selections or criteria that I may enter. I'm kind of moving through this pretty quickly, folks, here. We're up to page 17 here talking about those different transaction types. Okay. Primary balance account column displays. And what that's referring to on the top of page 18 there is our general ledger, because that's the report where that shows. So if we go back up to reports, transactions, general ledger, what that's referring to right here is over on the right-hand column right here called primary balance account column displays. You do have some options for it to either be the vendor, payee, or client, or just the account in question. And what that's referring to is on our columns tab here, which we're going to shift over to momentarily, is that it allows you to be able, there's a column here called primary balance account column. So basically it's what is the primary account in the transaction, and it'll show you that account name on there. Okay. This is one that you'll want to explore as well. Okay. Let's shift our focus over to some other tabs here. Virtually every report, not all, but most reports in accounting have this tab called custom account groups. We're not going to talk about setting up custom account groups. There's other information out on our support center page on working with and setting up custom account groups, where you want to isolate and see only certain accounts while omitting others. But once you've got custom account groups set up, you can come in here and you can check your custom account groups on any account group, any report where custom account groups tab is in play. Okay? So even on our general ledger options. So if I choose that and I choose my trustees and I include accounts with no activity, notice it's bringing in all of my trustees' expense accounts, regardless of activity, with all of their transactions. If I do that same thing for my treasurer's report, say, for example, I go to my treasurer's report and I choose my custom account groups and check trustee accounts. We're going to check accounts with no activity again. It's going to bring in all of my trustee income and expense accounts, but again, only those accounts that I've linked to that report. So again, depending on the report, it was going to reveal different information. I really encourage you to play with this stuff. You won't become comfortable with what the reports can generate for you and know whether it can produce what you're wanting until you dive in and play. Page 19 talks about columns. Virtually every report has a columns tab. Available columns on the left are the columns that are currently not being displayed on the report that we can. Visible columns on the right are the ones that it says, notice it says in parentheses, will appear. So, if I want to add a column, I can literally just double click on it. Let's see here. Let's do over under, and we add that over. Notice it moves it over to my visible columns on the right. Or if I go, oops, I didn't want that, I double click on over under, it takes it off. Okay? Or you can use the arrows, the left and right facing arrows here in the middle. If you go, okay, I want to move my annual budget amount up closer to my year-to-date balance, I highlight that. I use my up and down arrows here on the right, and I notice I can reorder those columns. So it doesn't matter what order I add them to the visible columns. I can always use the reorder arrows to reorder those if I wish. But literally every report in accounting has a columns tab. Treasurer's report. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between these reports, folks, because they're common ones. But again, columns. Treasurer's report. Different information columns. They're not the same information because they report on different things. Okay? General or balance sheet. Got a columns tab. Also got an options tab and custom account groups. But different information because the report is different. As I've been telling folks, I've been doing this for a long time, folks. And what I tell people on my support calls is folks that are reading that you're producing these reports for won't know what's available to them and what's helpful unless you show them. If you need to give them a treasurer's report initially with all of the information columns on it and just include a note with it that says, hey, let me know what information columns are useful for you and suitable, and I will be happy to, omit the columns you don't want and include those you do. But maybe they don't know what's available. So go ahead and give them everything and let them tell you what they don't want. Detail tab on the page of 19 and the top of page 20. A good example of where this is helpful is maybe like our treasurer's report. We might run a couple minutes long here, folks. I apologize. We go back to financial treasurer's report. So right here, we've got this tab called detail. So with the detail box checked, if I include everything, it's going to show me all of my accounts. Okay? So maybe I don't want that level of detail. So if I go to my detail tab, I can go, oh, I don't want to see my salaries and benefits expenses for each one of my employees. So if I uncheck that and I now go to print, now and I go down to past my income into my expenses, notice I've got salaries and benefits, pastor's salaries and benefits. I don't see any individual's income and expenses or any individual employees. I just see a total of what everybody's collective are, but I'm not seeing any individual expenses whatsoever. I'm just seeing subtotals. To take that a step further, if I go right here and I uncheck, if I do collapse all, and I uncheck my income and my expenses in their entirety and I click print, you could literally take away the entire detail right here. I work with churches that use this. Options. You have options available to you. Page 20 talks about, and you can do anything in between, folks. Seriously, you can pick which detail you want to see for which subtotals and which ones you don't, or which accounts. Okay? And it'll remember them. Funds. It talks about the funds tab, which is, in this case, on our fund activity report. Right here, it talks about our funds tab, and I can add or remove any funds I want. Many of the reports will have a fonts tab. If you want to change or play with the fonts on a particular report, you may certainly do that. So you don't like the TNR, the Times New Roman that it defaults to, change it. For your page header, your columns, or your body text of it. You have the ability to change it all. Okay? Simply clicking on any of those and changing the fonts. just keep in mind it could play a little havoc. You might have to play with some margins as well to get things to work the way that they should. Virtually all the reports in accounting can also have an option called export. We're not going to get into detail down here, but if you want to export the report here, if I click on that, I can also do it from the report preview, but if I choose the down arrow here next to send document, here are all of the file formats we can export the reports as. And finally, when you get to you can also export it from the preview of a report too. So right here, when we go to the preview of our consolidated fund activity report, right here, we've got our watermark option. If you want to add a watermark to it, you can also export it here. Or what's the other thing here? And multiple pages. That's what it's talking about. Right up here is the multiple pages option as well. Folks, again, I'm going to continue to beat this proverbial dead horse here about diving in and playing with these reports. If you're unclear about something that is showing you, please call us. Please contact myself or any one of my other technicians. We'll be happy to talk about it with you. These same reporting conventions are not just in accounting. They're in membership and donations too. So getting used to them really will help you kind of harness the power of what Church Windows, not just church accounting, but any of the modules in the software can do for you. Okay? All right. So having run a couple minutes long, I'm going to end things there.